Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar here today. I'm Kevin Powers. I am the founder and director of cybersecurity here at Boston College. I teach over at Boston College Law School, and I also teach over at the Carroll School of Management. I'm a cyber research affiliate at MIT Sloan, and I've been an attorney for 20 plus years. But I have with me today is Karen Kukoda, I have Jen McLarnon, and I also have Amanda Tucker. And what I'm going to do first is just kind of give you an intro of what we're doing, then introduce everyone here, and we'll move forward. So first off, welcome to our third webinar in our 2021-2022 Cyber National Security webinar series at Boston College. This time our topic of discussion is managing cyber risk. You're the target. How to protect your organization against social engineering attacks. I already told you who I am. Here's some ground rules as we move forward throughout the webinar today. Those of you who've been on before, we want this to be iterative. So please use the Q&A. You have any questions, if they're pertinent, I'll be monitoring them. I'll jump right in, I'll ask our panel. And if they're not pertinent to the discussion at that time, they will be at the end, and we'll take those questions on there as well. Also, learning objectives and goals for today. What you're going to get out of today's discussion. Well, you're going to be able to identify and define social engineering as it relates to cybersecurity. You'll be able to identify, define, and discuss the current cyber threats, the cyber threat actors, threat vectors, and the methodology used by cyber threat actors via social engineering, phishing, spear phishing, whaling, etc. We'll get into all those terms as we move along. Also, you'll be able to discuss, analyze generally, and while using applied case studies, mitigation strategies and best practices to effectively help your organization and you personally, more importantly, protect your network systems and data, including your personally identifiable information. So before I introduce our guest experts, I also want to give a shout out to Professor Ann Burgess. She teaches forensics here at Boston College, and she's actually a woman trailblazer legend. For those of you who've ever watched Mindhunter on Netflix, it's based on her. Okay, she's the investigator there. She's the PhD, and so we have, I guess, 50 plus of her students right now are in a classroom in Boston College from the undergrad program. So welcome, and hopefully you have your popcorn with you. So with that, let me introduce our panel. So I'll start off with Karen Kukoda. Karen is with Safeguard Cyber, but more importantly, Karen's been with our program before we even started. That's when I met Karen. It's like 7 years ago. She was then with FireEye. She's been a great supporter, a great friend to everything Boston College and me. So with that, Karen, I'm not going to read your bio. So why don't you tell us a bit about your background, position, and tell us how you first got involved with cybersecurity and how you've seen things evolve over the years.
Sounds great. Hey, Kevin, it's good to see you. Hi, Jennifer and Amanda. I'm super excited to be part of this panel. So Karen Kukoda, I lead the partnership team here at Safeguard Cyber. I've been here close to a year and a half now. We're 100% channel, so we sell through terrific partners, whether they're strategics, resellers, referral-based partners. Previous to Safeguard Cyber, I led the cyber risk partnerships at FireEye. So for those of you that have worked with FireEye or Mandiant in the past, an amazing group of people. I near and dear to my heart, cyber forensics. So that's so cool. I love Mindhunter too, Kevin. That's a great reference, and you'll have to make that connection for me. I was at FireEye for 7 years. I learned an awful lot about, threats, people, process, tools, preventative things we can all do when it comes to managing cybersecurity. Previous to that, I was at Mobile Iron managing partnerships and channel partners, and at AT&T for an awfully long time on the wireless side. So that's really how I started getting into security. Really came from learning operating systems and building out integrations. And then I was able to expand some of that as well as my skill set. And I think that's really important for all the listeners here. How do we help provide you with great examples and ways that you can continue learning in this space and expand your opportunities? So thanks for including me.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. And what I appreciate out of that is, even on a panel, you're already networking. You're like, yeah, connect me to Ann. I love it.
Yes. You
All
know
right,
how
with
shy I am.
next up, we have Amanda Tucker. Amanda's with Atlantic Bay Mortgage, and Amanda's from the Boston area originally. She's down in Virginia now. So Amanda, if you could give us a bit about your background, current position, and how you first got involved with cybersecurity and how you see things evolve over the past few years.
Sure. Well, so I'll echo Karen. That is one of my favorite TV shows. So I too, Kevin, would enjoy a connection. So Amanda Tucker, I'm the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer for Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group. We are a non-depository financial institution. Our business is primarily located in the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast. We are headquartered here in Virginia, but have over 140 locations throughout the United States. So in our business, we are focused primarily on mortgage origination, as well as mortgage servicing. And then we have ancillary lines of business, inclusive of consumer insurance, title. So in my role here, though, I oversee our enterprise risk management, our regulatory compliance, inclusive of our cyber risk function, as well as our human resources and people engagement and development teams. And so our primary focus here with respect to cyber risk, cybersecurity, and social engineering is we as a business, while we would love to see you in any one of those 140 locations, our business is primarily digital. So we are huge in the digital marketing, advertising space, as well as the ability to apply for any of our products and services online. So you conceivably could go through your entire mortgage process, including an electronic closing, and never see us. So that inherently increases our cyber risk and security concerns significantly so. So prior to joining Atlantic Bay, and I've been here for about 4 years, I was the Chief Operating and Risk Officer at a community bank headquartered here in Charlottesville, Virginia, but have spent the bulk of my career in the large regional and community banking space. But as Kevin mentioned, I am originally from Massachusetts, grew up there, and started my career at the Massachusetts Division of Banks as a regulator. So thrilled to be a part of this panel.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. And now on to Jen McLarnon. Jen.
Hey, Kevin.
Welcome. Jen's one of our distinguished alums from the Masters in Cybersecurity Policy and Governance program. Jen's a great friend, the former CIO of Boston College High School. I was sporting the mug for you. I'm sure you were seeing that.
Nice. I love it.
And that actually makes you like a double eagle because you have the BC High from working over there as well and teaching there. So if you could, Jen, tell us a bit about you, how you got involved in cybersecurity and what you're doing now.
Certainly. So I have 18 years of industry experience in education and have worked as a teacher, a dean of instructional technology, director of technology, and CIO. I currently work at Accenture as a security consulting senior manager in public service in the Northeast, where I support clients in higher ed, the nonprofit space, as well as state and local agencies and quasi-state agencies. So I feel very fortunate to work at Accenture as the world's largest security consulting firm. I'm really overwhelmed by our capabilities and offerings. And it's really nice when I speak with clients or prospective clients, I can have the confidence, that regardless of their challenge or opportunity, we can definitely partner with them and try to help. And as you mentioned, I was first introduced to cybersecurity and risk management while working as a director of tech at Boston College High School, and really developed that passion for cybersecurity and privacy as a student in the Cybersecurity Policy and Governance Master's program at Boston College. Yeah.
So thanks, Jen, and welcome everyone. So we'll jump right into it right here. So before we begin, and we always do this in class, we talk about all these terms and we act like everyone knows what we're talking about, but they don't. So for those folks, especially the students in the classroom right now with Ann Burgess, what do we mean, Karen, by social engineering? How do we define that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's a really prevalent threat vector today that many companies are not protecting properly. So it's awesome that we're able to give our feedback and describe some of the things that we see. So first off, a social engineering attack is an attack vector that heavily relies on humans, how we interact, how do we communicate, what types of communication tools do we use? Almost everybody's moved to the cloud today. So all of your communication tools are primarily based in the cloud. And, the threat actors know this. So they are manipulating people and humans into breaking their normal security protocols. And when they do that, they're able to gain access into unauthorized systems, right? They can move laterally within a network if they gain entry through one vector. And they do this primarily because it's one of the easiest threat vectors, and it ultimately results in financial gain. So, there you have it. I would love for, Jen and Amanda chime in on this. I know both of you have, worked with many different types of social engineering attacks. And I would say, lastly, a really important key metric here is 85% of the breaches that we see start with that human element or those human vulnerabilities.
So Amanda, do you have any thoughts on that you would like to add?
Yes. So I think basic is best. Oftentimes the social engineering attacks that we see at our organization, some of which are successful, entirely prey upon the human element. I think every individual's kind of basic desire to meet and fulfill the needs of their employer, or to avoid prosecution from the IRS. Those are the two that we most frequently see. I think we were talking about this a few weeks ago. It never fails, at least once or twice a week. Several of our employees here at Atlantic Bay receive an email communication from our CEO. He needs their help immediately. And if they just click on this link, they will be able to access exactly what they need to help him. And so we do monitor across a number of channels on the back end. And oftentimes when those attempts or attacks are flagged, it's not so much about identifying, but it's an immediate stop to disable that employee's access. That employee oftentimes gets a new PC. So you really do learn your lesson the first time it happens to you, when it creates a lot of chaos in your work environment. We often do not see sophisticated or complex attacks. And so we really believe that education is our number one opportunity to prevent and mitigate the risk.
Excellent. Jen, what do you think?
Right. I think we know cybersecurity is deeply technical, right? But it's also deeply and uniquely human, and humans are low-hanging fruit for hackers and certainly the weakest link. And as Amanda was saying, they certainly take advantage of our emotions, right? When they prey upon our fear, or when that sense of authority or urgency to react. And I think also our days, right? We jump from one Teams or Zoom meeting to the next. And so that combination can lead us to act rashly without taking appropriate action or thinking twice before clicking.
Yeah, so what you're telling us here is that it's the humans are the weakest link, right?
Exactly.
All right, so Karen, going back to you, so who's conducting these type of attacks? The different individuals, we hear all these terms here. So cyber criminals, nation states, hacktivists, terrorists, what do we mean by that?
So many different types of threat groups, right? I think the first you mentioned, nation state actors. So they actually weaponize social media and they target enterprise professionals. They target your executive teams. They target your IT teams, because think about it. Who holds the keys to the kingdom?
Right.
Your security team does, right? And so we think about that. We already know that they're infiltrating your organization this way. How do you protect your team from that type of an attack? And, at Safeguard Cyber, that's one of the things that we do. Besides monitoring your email, you now are communicating on Slack, or I'm sending you an attachment on Zoom today, or I'm, DMing you in Teams. And how are you monitoring those communication platforms to know there isn't something nefarious? It doesn't always have to be a link anymore, right? It could just be something that you put into the chat that's fileless and linkless and contains something that could affect your network. Some of the other examples, we mentioned spear phishing, right? So the same sort of threats that you see within an email platform are now being applied to all of the communication channels. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Again, these are platforms we help protect.
Right.
And many times you can't detect those types of attacks starting in those platforms. And then, cyber espionage, nation states counterintelligence operations that are targeting specific industries. So we've seen examples where, there are Chinese threat actors using LinkedIn as their primary threat vector. Or another great example, ATM networks have been targeted where there's phishing attacks within ATM networks. Lazarus Group is one of the threat groups that we've seen that's North Korean based.
Right.
It's been studied not only by our team, but other endpoint technology teams and forensic teams like Mandiant and CrowdStrike does that. And then you've also got your university-based attacks. And Kevin, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, but many times phishing attacks have targeted over 380 different universities here. And they're using those same kind of tactics. Do they start with LinkedIn? Do they start with email? Iranian threat groups are doing that. And unfortunately, it's working. And they're
I
getting
get that email to update my PayPal account, and I don't have a PayPal account.
Yes, then that's a great example of what not to do, right?
Right, exactly. So so we have the nation states really, and they're looking, what you talked about, that's espionage, right? They're going after intellectual property or to take down a critical infrastructure. The criminals, it's about money, right? It's always about money. And then we have the hacktivists, we hear that term, and even though they'll say it's not about money, it is about money there too, but they might have a political agenda to take down your business, whether it's a bank or a university or a hospital. And then the terrorists, well, they'll take our money too, but they're there to cause destruction and cause political havoc, right? So we covered the bases there. So Amanda, I'm going to go to you. Can you talk about like the different types of what we see is the social engineering attacks? We've heard the term, and Karen's brought it up too. She's talked about, phishing, spear phishing. Can you walk us through, and Jen too, will go to you and give, really examples of how this really plays out. It's great to hear the definitions, but I love to hear the examples. And I think the students and those in attendance would like to hear that as well.
Sure. So one of our recent favorites is, we've all been virtual and remote, attending virtual conferences, networking opportunities, and we're finally getting back to a place, certainly in the financial services industry, where conferences are in person again, which is really cool. And we're all super excited about it. And we take to LinkedIn to tell everyone in our 800 and however many individual network that we are attending a conference. So we actually recently had an incident here where Mortgage Bankers Association is a huge partner within the industry. They had their annual conference. It was out on the West Coast. We sent a team of executives and senior leaders out. They're all over LinkedIn, like saying, we're so excited to be in person. Can't wait to see everyone, stop by and say hi. Their first night out there, several of them get a text message from one of the senior leaders who was back here in Virginia. And he has lost his corporate credit card and he is trying to make a vendor payment. And because he has lost his corporate credit card, could they help him out and send them their credit card information? And so obviously, we don't have senior leaders who are sending text messages asking other senior leaders to send their corporate credit card. But we did have someone who didn't send their credit card info, but they did share some proprietary information. It was a very well-structured attack in that this individual, this cyber criminal, was able to glean enough information from the company's website, from social media, both LinkedIn and Facebook, to put together what was a seemingly reasonable text message string. And so we're seeing it from all fronts, whether it's coming in through social media, it's coming in via text messaging. I think because we are all remote, desk lines, hard phones are probably a thing of the past, and most of us are doing business either over social media or mobile devices, which is inherently increasing that risk.
Yeah, and that one you just talked about, that was not phishing, but that's smishing, right?
Kevin, I was going to let you say the name. Yes, smishing.
Smishing. Excellent. Jen, your thoughts.
So CEO fraud, or sometimes called whaling, is more broadly known as business email compromise, and it's also a form of spear phishing. So when threat actors impersonate company email accounts to impersonate executives, usually targeting finance or HR, into paying fraudulent invoices, typically wire transfers, or sending sensitive intellectual property, tax information. Often the initial unauthorized access to the business email account was a result of a social engineering campaign.
Yeah.
And we also have water hole attacks, right? A type of
Jen,
social
let me jump in
engineering.
real quick because I know.
Oh, sure.
So when we talk about social, like that social engineering campaign, how do they get that information? So
Yeah,
if they were going to social engineer me, how would they be able to do that?
Well, there's plenty of information out there about you, right? On the internet, your LinkedIn profile, perhaps you're into Facebook, and people, it's probably a good idea for folks to do some investigation about the open source information that's available, right? On the internet about you or about your company. So they might see your affiliation with Boston College, or where one of your daughters might go to college, and they might try to say, hey, I'm emailing from X college. Are you going to get together for Parents Weekend? So you, in your busy schedule, might say, oh, this is nice, and click, and you might share your credentials, mistakenly, right? Thinking it's a trusted entity.
So I'm part of the problem, right?
You are
what I'm
the
putting out
problem.
there, right?
No, you aren't. You're the
Also be part
solution.
of the solution.
I'm the solution. Oh, Jen,
Yes.
I'll give you bonus points when you graduate.
Thank
One
you.
free course.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
So I was going to mention
Yeah,
water
keep-
hole attacks drive folks to popular or trusted websites, right? Social media, banks, where they lure unsuspecting victims to, either spread malware or enter their credentials. And then there's an oldie but goodie, right? The old random USB stick that we could throw in the, the break room or in the parking lot, that somebody in the company is going to pick up and put it in their laptop, which could disseminate malware.
Yeah, perfect. And Karen, why don't you give us a couple of examples that you've seen a lot?
Yeah, I will. And I'm going to share my screen for just a second
Please
here,
do.
because I want to bring up, one of the things that I think is really critical for the team to think about. Hang tight. I just need to move this up and make this into, there we go. I think one of the key things to think about here is, because we've already identified that the human is the vulnerability, and think of all the ways we protect the network, your endpoint, your perimeter, your application layer, right? Where are the crown jewels? Where's your data stored? How are you protecting it? People are not mindful of every one of us touch these different things every day. And again, going back to being remote, we are the core vulnerability. So how are we protecting the human if we know this is really that first entry point? I'm going to back up for a second. I'm going to say this is where we come in. We help to secure the human from these communication-based threats and the risks that we see. And really what it comes down to is, we're seeing breaches increase. We've already identified that the exploitation of each one of us, and how easy it is to connect with Kevin on LinkedIn, because he's a great proponent of his program. He talks about all the things that he does, when he's cheering on his team, the Patriots and things like that. He gives you a lot of great things that you can connect with him on. So again,
Don't do that on LinkedIn.
Sorry, I outed you, but go Bills.
Yeah,
All right,
go
I got
Bills,
that.
right? Yeah.
So the point is, how are we looking at a mature security model that helps train the teams properly, create visibility into the threats that we see today, and then ultimately detect and prevent them? Because we already know this is the easiest infiltration point, right? I think connectivity's made us so much more vulnerable now. It's great to have the connectivity, but it expands our risks. It expands the security concerns. How are these things being protected properly? And I know both Jen and Amanda have great examples of these things that, I encourage you to chime in and talk more about this, because I think it's super important.
Yeah, and I was going to ask Amanda, when we're talking about the social engineering attacks, we know what they are, but where do you see industry right now, in your business, and not talking about where you work, but in general, where does industry stand with social engineering? Because we hear all these ransomware attacks, and ultimately it's coming in through, whether it's a business email compromise, it's a text that we talk about, the smishing or phishing. Where is industry on this, and why isn't this being solved, or at least more preventable? 85% and 90% is coming in through human failure.
So I think from an industry standpoint, we all hear it. We know it's an issue. We know kind of the common key buzzwords. But I will tell you, when we really drill into the education, whether it's here or as part of our industry efforts, I think for most people, they start to tune out. I think, Jennifer, as you've mentioned, it is thought of as very highly technical. And I think the general assumption is that for most financial institutions, you have robust back-end policy procedures and security safeguards to protect the organization. Or I think there's a little bit too of the naivete where it's, that's not going to happen to me. I don't click on links until that email from the CEO comes through, and then you're clicking on the link. I do think that in the non-depository space, we are starting to see cyber risk more regulated than it traditionally has been. I will say in the depository and bank space, from my time there in the banking world, this was heavily regulated. And you as an organization, unfortunately, you might see some regulatory findings, you might see financial penalties, but I don't know that it truly resonates until you have lost money. And I think for any organization who has ever had to file a cyber liability insurance claim, you probably will never want to do that again. Or if you go to file one and realize you don't have cyber insurance, you're really learning that lesson a hard way. And that's unfortunately, based on some of the statistics that Karen has shared with us, I think what drives organizations in the industry to take that step of being more conscientious.
In some of the basics on that too is like a flag. If you're getting an email out of the blue to change, an account, wire money here, or, do something different, change your password, you should be astute enough, or at least think twice before you do anything like that. Follow up. Maybe there's a number there, but maybe the number you're calling is not the person you're used to dealing with. So there's a lot to it.
It amazes me at the bottom of every email signature and on every financial institution's website, it says we will never ask you for your account information over text or email in any unencrypted means. And even though that warning is there, it never ceases to amaze me how many consumers, when prompted, think about it, if you're buying a home, that is one of the most stressful transactions that you will go through in your lifetime. As soon as someone asks you for anything, you want to keep this process moving, especially in the current purchase environment. And so you're going to respond, you're going to answer that question, you're going to text that information back because you want to believe that the person asking is truly there to facilitate your transaction.
Perfect. Jen, what's your thoughts here?
Right, I'm torn because I feel like the odds are stacked against us so bad, right? Because the threat actors, they're evolving and becoming more and more sophisticated, and they have access to so much business email compromise as a service, ransomware as a service, right? And it's like an evolutionary arms race. As we're trying to educate and put in defensive tools, they're doing the same on the offensive side. So, and I think it goes back to they're just exploiting our goodwill. I think most people mean well, but I don't have the answer for why folks won't just pick up the phone and verify, right? And I think we, in general, as organizations need to put more emphasis on security awareness training. Perhaps one thing we could do is tie it to performance evaluations, right? Carrot stick type of thing. But that's a tough one. I think the threat actors have the edge.
Do you think it comes down to more, and this is what Amanda talked about and Karen did too, is employee training, but not like the once a year half-hour training, but more targeted training across the year to make it an all hands on deck proposition.
Absolutely.
Cybersecurity is not just in the IT department; it's across the board, right?
Yeah, and you've said that. I've heard you say that many times. It's all hands on deck, and I think management, middle management can help. It was always my dream for them to start their weekly department meetings with a security agenda item, right? Asking them, did you take your security awareness training, right?
Yeah, other than we've been breached, right?
Right.
That's not the item you want.
Exactly.
Hey, with that, Karen, so when we talk about, I know Safeguard did some studies on this. I don't know if you have some slides you want to share on that to discuss some of the research you've done.
Yeah, we have done some studies on it. Let me take a look and see what I've got to share here. Give me a second.
So Karen, while you're looking for that, I was going to share one of the areas of education that we've had some great success on is monthly phishing campaigns. And so we will create our own phishing social engineering attack. It goes out to a random number of employees. And if they click the fish alert, it responds and shows them a graphic of here's all the things that you did right in identifying this as phishing. If you click on the link, you and your manager hear from us. Our cyber risk team reaches out, walks you through where you may have gone wrong. If you click on that and fail more than 2 to 3 phishing campaigns in a short period of time, you do get to do some additional training. But that monthly campaign has really kept it top of mind for everyone. And we have seen our actual compromises and risk of compromises decrease over the last 12 months.
Yeah, kudos to you for doing that monthly, Amanda. That's
great.
amazing. I would also encourage, you mentioned cyber insurance. So for those of you that already have cyber insurance and work with a great broker and a great carrier, ask them. Many times they have great preventative offers for the team, whether it's, running you through an incident response planning session, actually taking your executive team through a tabletop exercise, right? A simulated attack, because we see the mortgage industry, for example, is targeted in certain ways, or financial services teams are targeted in certain ways, or education space. The threat groups are using the same tactics to get in, and they do it over and over and over again. It's not like one college gets targeted. It's, 380 colleges got targeted all at once. And whoever has the lowest defense, guess what? You end up getting, there's an incident at hand. So I encourage you, if you currently buy cyber insurance, to talk to your broker and your underwriter. We actually have a feed from our platform at Safeguard into Cowbell Cyber, and they have risk indicators, and it's incredible feedback to see, if I have endpoint technology and I'm protecting the humans and I'm doing simulated phishing attacks, or I do things with a platform like KnowBe4, which is a great awareness training. These are the type of things we're starting to see in this industry where customers are being rewarded for doing the right things. We finally created that cybersecurity seatbelt, so to speak. So some of the things that we think about here is, like, to me, this is, as we try to educate the customer base, like, think about, who do your employees interact with? Is it internal or external? Do you have the right mechanisms in place to protect those kind of communications? What kind of info is shared? I mean, as Amanda said, they're never going to ask you in financial services to send them things that's in the clear, right? So if you're getting any kind of communication that way, that that's not okay to respond. Jen mentioned picking up the phone. Oh my gosh, there's so many times when I see customers that get targeted, especially at the executive level, if they just picked up the phone and called the CFO, or they called the person asking for the money, there's your check and balance. And again, you've stopped that incident from happening right then and there. And I think it's really important to think about, how do you manage risks across all your communications as an enterprise, right? And, Jen, you're saying yes, so I'm going to hand it off to you, because I know you've got some good examples to talk about here.
Well, you did a great job of laying this out, and everything you said, I agree wholeheartedly. I think one of the things I tried to focus on was making it personal for users, right? To show them how their lack of cyber hygiene or lack of awareness may impact them negatively or on a personal level. So, I would encourage them to use password managers, or send them to a site like Have I Been Pwned, right? To see if their credentials were involved in a breach, and potentially on the dark web. But yeah, anything you can do. I mean, a dark web scan of employee credentials is a good way to call attention to the risk factors. And I think when folks see that information, it's startling. and it might, be a good way to, exploit a crisis, make use of that emotion to get them to reset their passwords or take things a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and one thing too, I always think, since this is about humans and their vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, I think as a company, we can play upon that as well. It's not really a play. There's no interest like self-interest. And one of the things of working in a company, if there is a hack, you could lose your whole business, which means you're out of a job. Okay. And because of that, this is why it is an all hands proposition, right? Everyone has to take their part. And with that, when we're discussing best practices here, where I'm shifting now, we're at this whole work from home, right? And you're the employee. So now I'm actually at my house. I'm not at Boston College right now. So I have like the whole setup here. I have my Wi-Fi, but if I'm a lawyer, right, and I'm dealing with confidential information coming on my printer, how do I secure and protect myself now that I'm outside of the network? Amanda, I'll throw that at you.
So at the outset of
your whole business is outside the network.
So at the outset of the pandemic, we were only 33% remote, but we moved in over a 48-hour period to move 95% of our employee workforce, which is just over 1,000, remote. And so with that came incredible challenges. We really had to drill into our authentication measures. What applications would we allow employees access to without being on the VPN? We also did internet speed tests, but still one of the challenges is with the web-based nature of solutions, especially in the financial services space. So many of those web-based solutions you can get to conceivably without going on the VPN, and you can access from a mobile device. So early on, we did several editions of what we call Remote Life. So it was a newsletter that was part fun, things to do while you're stuck in your home, but part of it was educational, things to be conscientious of. As we have continued to keep our workforce remote kind of coming through the pandemic, I mean, it's still, if I'm on a call and I see someone joining the call from Panera, my first thought is like, how are they going to access the documents for this meeting in the middle of Panera? And so oftentimes we'll send a message and just say, hey, I see you're in a public space, please make sure you're only joining Zoom on this call. So it really is the education, but it's also locking down some of our systems. The flip side of that, though, is, our mortgage bankers. So this is our team out at the forefront. They're interacting with consumers. They're trying to meet the needs of the consumers in our communities. If we lock them down too much, it's hard for them to meet those consumer needs. It's hard for them to do their business. And so we've really tried to create that happy medium. One of the areas we've been most successful, though, is IP blocking. And so making sure that IP addresses coming in from higher risk jurisdictions or geographies and locales that are known to be sort of cyber crime havens, blocking those IP addresses. One thing, though, that we've seen as we continue to see vendors take a lot of their business offshore, they're going offshore to some of those geographies. And so it really has been kind of, what are the needs of the business? How do we best mitigate our risk? But those are a few of the things that we've done that has helped.
All right, that's great. So Jen, pretend for a second I'm a student in, say, Professor Ann Burgess's class. Can you tell me why I would not want to use the Wi-Fi at the Starbucks on Comm Ave, or the Dunkin' Donuts right across the street from St. Ignatius Church?
Well, very good example. I think we can never verify the security of that network, right? And we know that folks can set up pineapples, right? When phony
Yes.
Wi-Fi.
What do you mean now? What's a pineapple?
It's a fake or a decoy. So you think you're connecting to the Starbucks, right? And when you connect, the hacker in near proximity can see all of essentially your username, password, and keystrokes and communication in and out of your device. So
for instance, if I was Venmoing one of my friends, or they were Venmoing me, and I had the Wi-Fi and it wasn't actually even the Dunkin' Donuts, which is probably unsecured, it could be some hacker who then gets that information and takes that money.
Yeah, potentially, yes. Basically, anything that you have open, tabs, information on your computer, any messages that are going in and out. So that's something when we moved to a remote workforce, right, Kevin, it took a little bit of hand holding. We developed those
Right.
Q&As, right, for faculty, staff. And we, offered office hours as well to support if they had questions on how to actually make the configuration changes. We developed the telecommuting policy that explicitly stated the requirements and what could be taken off-site. But, it comes down to, policies can't be paper tigers. Like, they need input, they need buy-in, so they need champions. So the more you can do that, the more effective they'll be.
Excellent. So I'll throw that to Karen. I think you just teed her up for us. So what's the board's role here, the board of directors?
Yeah, I think we see there's obviously cyber concerns that it should be a board issue. Every single public board has got to address the risks, has got to do their best to mitigate those risks. And if they have had a breach, they have to demonstrate what they have done to prevent those risks from happening. And, again, one of the things we do here at Safeguard is we have automated compliance built into our engine. So if there was any sort of an incident, you could go back into the archives and see that where you've had automated compliance to stop, sending a social security number out, or PHI and PII, things that could create an incident and or a breach, right? And that's really important. I highly encourage people to use things like, two-factor authentication on all of your applications and your platforms. If you're communicating,
When you talk about two-factor authentication, I know it is, but what's that for our audience?
Yeah, so it's a check and balance when you go to use an application to verify it's you, because we often say verify but trust in security, right? So this verifies I am who I am. When I worked at FireEye, one of the things that we did is anytime you logged in to any application, you had to two-factor authenticate and verify. So whether that was an application on my phone that I could just quickly go into Duo and say, yep, legitimately, there's 2 times they're proving it's Karen logging into the network, not Kevin trying to get in, pretending to be Karen, right? So that's what two-factor does, is it checks to make sure it's really you getting into the sensitive information or the data or the application that you're trying to access.
And when we talk about that too, that's not foolproof, but what it does is reduce the risk, right?
Big time. Yes, definitely. Another thing I would encourage people, look at email addresses, look at any sort of suspicious sender's address. Very often it'll be off by 1 letter. The spoofing or the signature or the greeting. Anytime you get something urgent, again, that's another thing to be mindful of and aware of, and protect your enterprise from those types of attacks. And I would say, going back to the board question, I think it's something that should be addressed on a very regular basis, not just once a year. It should come up multiple times a year. And there's different facets of it. There are also great partners you can work with to test it. Like, I'm sure Accenture has a whole group that helps boards get ready and prepare for attacks. I know Mandiant did that very often, would present the latest threat vectors for a specific industry, and then talk about how do you identify the vulnerabilities, whether you have to patch it or you have to implement some new technology or just create awareness and visibility. But these are how you decrease your risks and improve your overarching security program.
Awesome. So Amanda, I'm going to talk to you because you run the security side and risk, right? But outside of in your group, everyone's focused on this. How do you deal with the different business units to get them to buy into the whole security side of things? They want to get these loans out there. They want to get the mortgages done. They're all about efficiency and pulling in money, right? So how do you get them to buy into security?
So a huge part of it is education. We take a little bit of a different spin on it. So instead of, pushing you canned cybersecurity content through our LMS, there's a lot of value in that content, but we've also started to do more so pod meetings. So frequently myself, one of our other either enterprise risk or cyber risk directors will meet with our regional managers, our sales managers, our mortgage bankers to walk them through what we're seeing in the industry. And we really approach it from the standpoint of this is a value add, this is a business service to your borrower, because you are able to give them that level of education and confidence. One of the other things I think that's helping us in this space is consumer awareness. We have, I will say, in nearly 20 years, I have never seen or heard as many questions on our company's privacy notice as I've seen in my entire career. But consumers are really reading these privacy notices. They want to know who your affiliates are. They want to know who your service providers are that you may share information with. I think those are great questions to ask. But so we kind of take the approach that we give our mortgage bankers that knowledge, that why, beyond them just saying it's a regulatory notice, we're required to give it to you. They're able to walk their borrower through, here's who we share information with, here's how we safeguard and protect it. And unfortunately, we've had a few mortgage bankers that have had erroneous links and information shared with incorrect individuals. And that is an incredibly difficult lesson to learn, because you as the person who has done that, I mean, you feel terrible when it's happened. They immediately recognize their error. They're hearing it from their borrowers. They're hearing it from management here at the company. So it's just a lot of education, giving real examples as we've shared here today. I find that kind of the case studies, this happened here, don't be the next victim, that seems to resonate the most, unfortunately, is those lessons learned.
Excellent. Thanks, Amanda. All right. Well, fantastic advice. And, since we have a few minutes left and we have an all-woman panel here, I thought what we could talk about is women in cyber and how we can address the gender gap. And I thought it was great because we led off with Professor Ann Burgess, a legend, with Mindhunter. She's here. And I think it's important that we address that. And one important factor too, we know that in the cybersecurity field now, I think it's like 2 to 3% women really out there. And so we got all three of them here right now. But in our program, we have 33% women in our program. And we've really made an effort at Boston College to try to fill that gap. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Karen. Can you discuss ways that women can get involved with cybersecurity as a career choice?
Yes, and awesome. I love hearing that your percentage is that high in your program, Kevin. So again, kudos on that. I'm going to again share a slide or two here for everybody. So I think first of all, how do we increase the pipeline? There's a few things, and Kevin's got some great links I sent him in advance for groups, but women only represent 25% of the cybersecurity workforce today. There are 3.5 million of unfilled jobs. That is a huge opportunity for us to get out there and help fill them. And so one of the things we've done here at Safeguard Cyber, we've created a group called Vision and Voice to empower women to get into this field because it's so important. And we see strength in diversifying our workforce. So first of all, I encourage everybody, partner with nonprofits, partner with non-government organizations. They've got some great groups that focus on advancement, placement, recruitment here. Look at underserved areas. There can be, again, recruitment opportunities within communities that lack access to technology or resources, things like that. I'm a huge fan of it's never too late to get into cyber. You can make this transition in the middle of your career. I mean, look at some of the things that both Jen and Amanda have done previously and how their jobs have morphed to include cybersecurity, right? Great examples. Mentorship and representation, so important. There are so many different great groups for mentoring. I'm a huge fan of Athena Alliance, Women on Boards, Cyber Jiu-Jitsu. Kevin's got the links and I hope he shares these, but there are some.
They're all posted right in the chat. So everyone.
Yes, thank you. And then I encourage you, work with your HR teams. As you have job opportunities within your company, encourage your HR team to help identify how do we expand and diversify and include women that have the right skill sets to do this. Super, super important.
And Karen, when we talk about the skill sets, and that I want to bring that up too, because I think one of the deterrents is everyone sees cybersecurity, so they run and they think it's just a tech issue. Can you talk about the different roles and positions in cybersecurity that aren't really just about tech, but more focused on the liberal arts, if you think of it that way?
Yes, and I have a great example. I have a daughter that's in college right now. She's studying business at Cal Poly, and she wanted to go into marketing and sales. So I was fortunate enough to take her into FireEye one day with me, and my CMO set up an entire day to spend with the marketing team. She had no idea that there was partner marketing and channel marketing and direct marketing and event marketing. And there were all these different facets to supporting a cybersecurity product portfolio or services and things like that, that it really created an incredible eye-opening experience for her. So first off, find a sponsor, talk to people. Cybercrime Magazine just introduced a great documentary on women that came out this week. I was fortunate to be part of it. There's I think 30 different women in all different types of careers and things that you wouldn't normally associate with cybersecurity. So I think that's also a great place. Look at success stories, look at the journey, find a mentor that can help point you in the right direction. Lastly, I encourage people, try. You can always try it to see if you like it. You'll never know if you don't expand your skill set. And, I'm always amazed at what opportunities lead or can expand from a current experience. So I'm sure Jen and Amanda have things they want to chime in here. Sorry, I took over there, but
no, that was great.
I'm very passionate about this topic.
Yeah, I'll go to Amanda first. Amanda, if you could talk about what you see out there and what you're doing to really bridge that gap, the gender gap.
So I think, Karen, you absolutely touched on it. I think seeking out opportunities to either mentor or be mentored. I think for those of us who are fortunate enough in our careers to be in leadership roles or in positions where we are actively out there hiring, we do have an obligation to help mentor, grow, and lead that next generation. I know within our organization, one of the things that I absolutely love about Atlantic Bay is we have a 7-person executive leadership team. 4 of us are female, which in this industry, in that space, that's amazing. And so one of the things that we in turn have done through our intern program is seek opportunities to welcome interns into Atlantic Bay every summer and throughout the year at times, and give everyone an opportunity to either focus on a specific area of the company, or within my corporate risk and compliance teams, you can also do a rotation. So you can see enterprise risk, regulatory compliance, investigations, cyber risk, really get a feel for how an enterprise risk program comes together, but also see if there's different areas within that enterprise risk space that speak to you. I would say the other things, and I think we've touched on it, and Kevin, I love the way you phrased it, the liberal arts side of cyber risk. On my cyber risk team, we do have several positions that I'll say are more art than science. Right. We have vendor risk management within our cyber risk space, third-party risk. That typically tends to be more governance, policy, and analysis versus kind of highly technical focus. So I think there's so many facets of cyber risk. One of the areas of our company that you would never guess is really focused in cyber risk is what we consider our business relations and social media monitoring. So we have a team that's dedicated to monitoring the social media activity of our executives, our mortgage bankers, and really the company's brand. And their day is spent actually working in Safeguard Cyber, monitoring for alerts and red flags to understand and mitigate the risk to the company. So I think there's so many opportunities out there. I would say if you're newer to your career in cyber risk or thinking of getting into this space, just reaching out. I think attending this panel, getting to hear various perspectives, reaching out. There may not be an opportunity for you at a certain space, but that doesn't mean that that leader isn't probably very likely and open to having a conversation, helping make introductions, giving you some information and resources.
Excellent. And on that too, Jen, do you want to pipe in here? We
Yeah,
had
so
an issue
quick-
with the chat. They were looking
Oh.
for the links. They're up there. There's like 100 of them.
I think all great points. I think definitely mentorship is important, but women also need sponsors, right? Both male and female. So, Kevin, you're wonderful at this, right? And inclusive, you open up your network. So I think my advice would be to follow your passion, build your network, talk to people in the industry about the work that they do, right? And every time you meet with someone, ask them to introduce you to 5 others in their network, right? Because it's going to build your confidence. I think a lot of women and some men, right, they tend to suffer from imposter syndrome when they doubt their abilities, and sometimes they feel like a fraud, right? And this is especially true of women of color, especially Black women and LGBTQ communities, right? They're most at risk for this because I think women tend to lack role models, right? So has a major impact on making us feel like we do or don't belong. So if we don't see examples of people who look like us or share our background succeeding, it can make it harder for us to see ourselves succeeding. So, I'm amazed at the groups and the helpers that are out there on LinkedIn. And I think, research shows that this younger generation, they're social animals, right? They're out there in social media and they care about diversity, and they're interested in how, we're staffing both the IT or our security teams, but also do we have women represented on the board level and in executive leadership? So it's like ironic because if we want to hire more women, then we need to take care of the ones that we're currently employing, right? Promote them, and because they care about a growth track, right? In addition to salary. So.
And that's on the men too, right? That's what you're saying.
Right.
Like when our program kicked off and we talked about this, we had 16 students, right? So this is early on. We had a very diverse group. The only problem was there was not one woman in the group. And we went, and it wasn't something where it was like, oh, you're in the program because you're a woman. We went out and we recruited and we targeted, we made sure, I think half our staff is women. We're teaching a class right now over in the law school where it's majority, we have 33 students, and I think it's 18 of them are women in there. And that's the key. And you want to get more involved because there's so much you can do in cybersecurity. We talked about that, the liberal arts, right? It's communication, psychology, political science, English, history, management, accounting, legal, you name it. There's a job for you. And there's 4.1 million for you. Choose one and you'll be happy. So with that, I'll throw it back to everyone because we only have like a minute left here. Any takeaways, Karen, then I'll go to Jen and then Amanda.
I encourage men and women to support all of us here to help get more folks involved in fighting this fight. It's so important. It's a very dynamic, interesting space. It constantly evolves. So I feel like my job is never the same day in and day out. It's a great opportunity to learn. It's a great opportunity to expand your skill set. I can't say enough about what a great career path it's been for me. And I feel fortunate that I have friends like everybody here on the panel that have been supportive and helpful and, enlighten me on a daily basis. So thank you for that.
Excellent. Jen.
I would say just follow your passion and don't be afraid to ask questions, look for mentors, look for helpers. And I think it's going to take a diversity of thought of all types to solve the challenges that are presenting us in terms of cybersecurity. Like the folks that are pulling off these hacks, right? They're broad and diverse, and it's going to take a broad and diverse, defense to stop it. So I think I'm open to network. If someone's on the call right now, let's connect. I'm happy to be a mentor or support however I can.
Excellent. Amanda. Oh, you're on mute.
That had to happen once, right?
Yeah, I had to say it once, even if it didn't happen.
We're so close. I was going to echo what Jen said. I absolutely love to network. If financial services, cyber risk is an interest to you, please reach out. Would love to have a conversation, or at the very least offer some insight and tools based on my experience in the industry. But I would also say for those of us in leadership, continue to reach out, continue to engage. continue to talk about all of the benefits of this industry, of this space. And for those of you newer to your careers, don't hesitate to reach out and ask someone for 5 to 10 minutes to hear more about what they do, and for an opportunity to network. It doesn't have to be networking for a job. It can simply be networking to make a contact, to build a relationship.
Excellent. So with that, I want to thank Karen, Jen, and Amanda for your time. And for everyone out there, just a heads up, our next webinar is in January. We're kicking off the spring term. We have the International Association of Privacy Professionals. We're doing a joint webinar with them and PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is really going to be a nice way to kick off the new year. Also, the big one on March 9th, 2022, we're hosting the 6th annual Boston Conference on Cybersecurity with the FBI. We're going to be in person again. We're going to stream it on the web. So, keep your eyes out for it. You'll see it all over LinkedIn and on our webpage here at Boston College. So with that, have a great holiday season. Stay safe. And of course, go Eagles. Take care, everyone.